Hello, mi gente, and welcome back to Nata Knows Best. So today I'm making an easy strawberry shortcake. I love this recipe because it's bright and fruity and perfect for the summer. I also love this recipe because it's made using biscuits instead of cake. This is gonna be so good, so let's get into it. The first thing we're gonna do is cut up some of our strawberries. So I have a few in our bowl, and we're gonna need about 3 cups of chopped strawberries. So I recommend cutting your strawberries in 2 halves. And the reason why we're starting on the strawberries first is because we want them to start releasing their juices. So we're actually going to be macerating these strawberries. And for those of you who are like, I don't know what macerating is, not that. It's just a fancy way to say that you're going to add some type of sugar or some type of citrus to your fruit so it can start releasing its own natural sweetness and juices. So it's gonna make this almost into its own little strawberry sauce compote type thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure these out. Remember, I said we need 3 cups of chopped strawberries. So that was 1 cup. Okay, I think we should have enough. And to our strawberries, I'm going to add our sugar. Remember, the sugar is going to help release some of the juices in the strawberry. To help in that as well, I'm going to add half of a lemon. Just want to get some of those juices. And then of course, it's gonna balance that sweetness. So we have a little bit of tart, a little bit of sweet. Perfect. And using a spoon, I'm just going to toss around our strawberries and let them start doing their thing. I'm gonna move our strawberries into the fridge so we can go ahead and start on the second part of this recipe, which are the biscuits. To start on our biscuits, we have a bowl of all-purpose flour. And before I start on this, let me just explain why we're using biscuits instead of cake. So I really wanted this recipe to be super easy, and to me, making biscuits is a lot easier than making a full-fledged cake. So that's one of the reasons. And then of course, who doesn't love biscuits over cake? Personally, a homemade biscuit sounds so much more delicious to me because it has that crust that's gonna give us some crumbly texture instead of, I don't know, the crumbly texture of a cake. So it's totally up to preference on how you like making your strawberry shortcakes, but I decided to use homemade biscuits because why not? So anyway, in our all-purpose flour, we're going to add some baking powder. And then I'm also going to add some salt. And these biscuits are actually gonna be more sweet than they would be savory because we're going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar. And I'm just going to whisk this up to fully incorporate all of those dry ingredients. And speaking of ingredients, all of these ingredients and the full recipe will be linked in the description box below. Just so you guys know, if you haven't gotten the news, I started a website, and you guys will see this recipe linked on my website, which is nataknowsbest.com. So stay tuned for that recipe. So our dry ingredients are fully incorporated. So I'm going to swap out my whisk for a fork. If you have a pastry cutter, definitely use that. I don't, so I'm using a fork. And we're going to add in unsalted butter. This is unsalted butter that has been cubed. And you want to mix it in, kind of crumbling it together along with the dried ingredients. So you can start developing the crumbly texture of the biscuit. If you find it easier, you can also use your hands. Again, you just want to break apart some of these pieces of butter and start creating the dough. See, so you're still going to get some of the chunks of butter, but we're breaking them down so they incorporate a little more. So as you guys saw, I ended up switching from the fork to my hands because I felt like I could better control the texture of the biscuit, because what you don't want to do is over mix it. So that's why I used my hands, but ultimately you can use whatever tool you like. So if you happen to have a food processor, great, you could use that. You can use a pastry cutter, you can use a fork, or like you saw, you can use your hands. So the next step is to add our cold milk. And again, switching utensils, I'm going to fold in our milk into our crumb mixture that we have so far. And if you guys like the taste of a tangy biscuit, then you can use buttermilk, which is always recommended. But if you don't have buttermilk, you can always use whole milk, which is what I used in this recipe. So you want to combine these ingredients just until they're loosely combined. You're gonna have some dry parts, you're also gonna have some extra wet parts, but that's okay. Now I'm going to remove our dough from our bowl. Again, it's just loosely incorporated. We have some dry pieces, we also have some wet pieces. I'm just going to kind of combine this together on a floured surface, like you see here. I'm going to roll out our dough just until it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick. Okay, so this is how your dough is gonna look. It's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick. You see a little bit of your butter clumps, which is good. And we're going to now start cutting our biscuits. So I'm going to press down. Woo! And that's one of our biscuits. So I'm gonna put that aside, make sure it stays well floured. Any scraps, make sure to keep them because we will be using this dough until it's gone. So I'm going to add our biscuits to the fridge so we can start cooling some of that butter that got a little soft to make sure that when they bake perfectly. Okay, so I took out our biscuits from the fridge. They're now nice and cool, and all the butter that was softened is now nice and hard. So I'm going to place our biscuits on a parchment-lined cookie sheet. And the key to making biscuits rise is to actually put them very close together. So you're gonna line them up almost shoulder to shoulder. And then to give them their finishing, we're going to brush them with a little bit of heavy cream or the leftover milk that you have. Of course, if you used buttermilk, you're gonna use that instead. And then on top of that, we're going to sprinkle some sugar, just a tad so it can crystallize and get a sweet, sugary topping. Perfect. So next, I'm going to put our biscuits in the oven and bake them for about 15 to 18 minutes. And before I forget, our oven is preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So I am so excited because our biscuits are out of the oven and they look amazing. Just check these out. Look at this cute little one. And the minute I open these up, look at how crumbly these are. These are perfect. So now that all of our separate components are done, I'm going to assemble myself a strawberry shortcake and give it a try. Okay, so I have my assembled strawberry shortcake. Everything about this is homemade. So we have the homemade biscuit, we have our strawberry compote that we created, and then while our biscuits were baking, I made some homemade whipped cream. That alone tastes amazing. So I'm gonna go through every layer. We have the whipped cream, the strawberry, the biscuit. That's it. Wrap it up. This dessert is amazing. I love how bright and fresh it is. These strawberries have so much sweetness, but that touch of tartness because we added the lemon. The whipped cream is so light and airy. The biscuit is crumbly. It's slightly sweet, but it's so, so good and tender. This entire dessert is perfect for the summer, so I highly recommend all of you to make this recipe. I will definitely go ahead and link this recipe to my Not That Knows Desserts playlist. If you guys don't know, I have a playlist that is dedicated to all of my favorite desserts. So anytime you're looking for something sweet and delicious to make for your family, definitely check that playlist out. I will link it right here for you guys. Remember to stay tuned next week for another delicious recipe. And remember, all of these recipes, plus any future ones or past ones, will be linked on my newly launched website, notthatknowsbest.com. So definitely check it out. And as always, mi gente, thank you so much for watching Not That Knows Best.